Frank Klose from 97.3 ESPN.com tweet this yesterday. The Phillies are not getting that number one pick, Frank. They're playing too good. They're playing too good. But there's been a lot of positive things to see these last couple of weeks. And this is what, bringing the young guys up. It can backfire on you. But, hey, guess what? Some of these guys might actually be able to play.
There's definitely a different sense around the ballpark. Phillies fans, they're there in their Nick Williams jerseys. They're there in their Rhys Hoskins jerseys. And I kid you not, I was walking around the concourse when Rhys Hoskins had one of his at-bats on Sunday, and people just stopped dead in their tracks. Whatever they were doing, they were in line for a hot dog.
No, that's cool. That's cool, isn't it?
They just stopped to watch. Yeah, it's definitely different than it was in the beginning of the season. Phillies fans are very excited.
And they should be. I mean, I saw the play that Crawford made the other night at third base, barehanding that thing, throwing it across the diamond. You just talked about Hoskins there, people walking around in the Nick Williams jerseys. I mean, there's a legitimate reason for fans to want to actually stop and watch and turn the game on because you're getting a chance to evaluate players to say, hey, this guy could be a piece next year. And that's one of the things that hopefully the Phillies recognize and start the season off like that next year rather than go into it the way they did the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I think the players, a lot of these guys, they've come up together. I think they have a lot of fun when they play. And some of them, I've watched a lot of the minor league games the last couple of years, and some of them are just totally energized by this new environment. J.P. Crawford, now I've seen him play defense in the minor leagues, and I always thought he was decent, but he is playing much, much better than I projected he would have done in the major league. So definitely a new energy, and it's really contagious among that group.
So on that note, talking about starting off with young players, question one in the mailbag is, how about trading Cesar Hernandez for pitching and having Scott Kingery, your starting second baseman, to start the year next year? How about him starting the year in Philly rather than bringing him up halfway through the season? Can they get something for Cesar, some pitching, and do they go with Kingery?
Well, very interestingly, I just posted to 97.3 ESPN.com. Scott Kingery was named a minor league Gold Glove recipient today. So he's got that Rollins Gold Glove now to cap off a tremendous minor league season. And I think he could do it. I think there's a couple considerations here. I think the first consideration is the Phillies have many infield pieces. It's not just a matter of moving Cesar Hernandez out of the way. And I think the Phillies could be open-minded when they go into the trade market. They won't necessarily kind of box themselves into trading Cesar Hernandez, or if other teams are thinking, the Phillies are trying to unload Cesar Hernandez, they're not going to get the return that they really want. But Freddie Galvis is a year away from free agency. We saw J.P. Crawford make great plays at third base. We've seen him make great plays at shortstop. I know fans are very happy with Freddie Galvis, but 1 year out of free agency, maybe he's a good candidate to move, and maybe you keep Hernandez for a while and do what you're doing now, which is sort of move pieces around day to day to sort of put yourself in the best position to win each day. So I think they can be very open-minded here. Maikel Franco, he's showing some signs of snapping out of his funk, and who knows, maybe the other young guys around him have really elevated his energy. But speaking of Franco, you may have noticed a couple years ago the Phillies waited just until they would get an extra year of control out of Franco. They called him up around May 15th because he had some service time the year before. Maybe May 1st is a better target for Kingery's entranceway because he's not on the 40-man roster. He doesn't have to be on the 40-man roster this year. So they can kind of go through spring training, really get a really long, good look at Kingery. And then, you know what, maybe they do decide he has to come up right away, but I would not be shocked if they give him some more bats at AAA. And they like to say that they want 400 at-bats at each level when they bring up a player. And I think what you're seeing from you saw that with him to be moved up to AAA from AA. So maybe they legitimately want him to get some more at-bats too. So it kind of takes the pressure off to bring him up right away. I wouldn't dismiss the possibilities, but if the Phillies make a couple of really good trades for the likes of Hernandez and Galvis, if they get value in return, then I think that they would consider that. But the Phillies don't have to unload Hernandez in particular, and they don't have to unload anybody. I mean, they can mix and match like they're doing now. So if they get the right trade, then yes, it's a possibility, but you'll never know until it happens if the right trade arises.
Frank, how you doing? It's Deshaun. John from the Mailbag wants to know if Roman Quinn stays healthy next season, which is a big if, what is his role with the big league club?
Yeah, I got to package this question with Josh's question about the fourth and fifth outfielders because I think Roman Quinn, he very unfortunately he missed his chance this year. The Phillies had injury after injury. They gave way too many starts to the likes of Hyun-Soo Kim and Cameron Perkins and Michael Saunders over the course of the year. So if Quinn was healthy, he really would have had an opportunity to show that he belonged in the major leagues and belonged a starting player. But with all these injuries that they've had to Altair, Kendrick along the way, and then even Herrera got banged up and Daniel Nava got banged up, would have been perfect to slot Quinn in right now. And I think the only thing that the Phillies can really conclude now is that they really can't rely on Quinn for anything significant for next year. So I tend to think that Quinn's going to come into spring training. He has a good spring training. He makes the club. But I think he's going to make the club sort of as a fourth outfielder and kind of use him as a guy because he's a switch hitter. He plays great defense. And the Phillies have a nice mix in the outfield with two lefties and a righty, where Quinn could possibly spell somebody depending on, what type of team matchup they have that day, to give the guy a day off. Or if somebody gets hurt, he could be a guy that slots in for that disabled list stint. So I think they're kind of probably approaching the situation that, if this guy is always getting injured and really it hasn't been one major thing. A year ago when we were talking about this, our question was, okay, well, these aren't related injuries. But maybe, I don't know, maybe there's, you wonder if his body just is going to get injured all the time. And for that reason, I think the Phillies will try to bring him in as a fourth outfielder and maybe not playing him every day. He won't get hurt so much. So I think that's what they kind of have in mind for him. And to sort of answer Josh's question about the fifth outfielder, I think you're going to see another minor leaguer like Daniel Nava, and maybe Daniel Nava, who knows. He'll kind of come into camp as a non-roster invitee and earn a spot, one of those minor league contract guys, because there always seems to be one that kind of steps up and gets a job. So right. I think that they're going to fill out the outfield next year.
Frank, last one in the mailbag for you here. Chris wants to know, would you go after a guy like Darvish in the offseason or maybe a guy like Cobb or Lynn? Is pitching the free agent target for the Phillies?
I think that we kind of talked about this last week, and I mentioned Alex Cobb. Alex Cobb is somebody I really like. He's not the upper-tier type pitcher, but he's somebody who's very reliable. And if you think of like the J.A. Happ types of the world that could give you double digits in wins and a 3-something ERA, most of the time. And Happ had a 20-win season. It's once in a while players like that step up and really do well. I think he's very reliable, but one worry that we've seen in recent days is that Alex Cobb has been getting scouted right now while he's still with the Rays. I think some teams are looking at signing him. The Phillies might have a lot of competition to get Cobb. And Lance Lynn, Lance Lynn is somebody I hadn't really given too much of a thought to. He kind of profiles the same way. He gets you 10 wins a year. He gets you a 3-something ERA. Very reliable in the middle of a rotation. And one interesting thing that the Phillies will have to look into here is the new collective bargaining agreement. If you sign a player that had a qualifying offer, it's no longer a first-round pick attached, but it's a second and a fifth. And that only happens if the person's deal exceeds $50 million. So I think a lot of players like him, like Lance Lynn, like Alex Cobb, you're going to see a lot of 3-year, $48 million type contracts, keeping you below that threshold so you don't have to give up any prospects and essentially, kind of capping the price that you're going to pay for somebody below $50 million. So if the Phillies could get one of them for about that would be great. Cobb, given the interest now, I think he's going to be getting a little bit more perhaps than that. But in terms of the likes of Darvish, who, by the way, was not that phenomenal last night, only going 5 1/3 innings against the Phillies. As I've said before, you're kind of getting him for the years that are beyond his prime years. And if you do that, you're gonna end up having some bad money at the end. And I think the Phillies while they're going to be much better next year, they're not looking to contend next year. So you kind of wait a year for that one free agent impact pitcher that will help you win right now. And I think the Phillies just aren't there yet. And for them to waste, so to speak, a prime year from Darvish when they're not ready doesn't necessarily help them afterwards. But a lot depends. I wouldn't rule it out. If the market really shows people aren't willing to sign players like that, maybe they jump in. But I don't see the Darvish or Arrieta types being in the Phillies' plans.
All right, for more on the Phillies, at Frank Klose with a K on Twitter. And, of course, check out the Mailbag on 973ESPN.com and read Frank's piece on Scott Kingery, the Gold Glove Award winner, which adds another nice piece to the Phillies minor league puzzle. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, guys.